Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine art that doesn't just show you what something looks like, but how it feels. That's kind of where we're headed today. How does art, come alive?
Today, we're plunging into a truly captivating subject. It's about how Western visual art, really from its earliest sparks, how it's always had this vibrant kind of restless energy.
That's a great way to put it. Restless.
Yeah, we're talking about this fundamental tension, this constant dance. So our mission today is to explore this living pulse of art, try to understand the two main tracks, you could say, that have defined visual expression across time. And speaking of forces breathing life into art, we have a really special contemporary example that brings this whole historical deep dive straight into 2025.
Oh, this is perfect timing.
It is the upcoming exhibition, New Expressions, Paintings by Robert Hoffer at True Grit Art Gallery. It really embodies everything we're about to explore.
That's absolutely right. This exhibition, it runs from July 12th through August 9th, 2025, and it just perfectly showcases the enduring power of Expressionism, how it continues to infuse art with vitality right here, right now.
It feels like a perfect bridge, doesn't it, from this
Yeah.
huge historical sweep to what's happening today.
It really is. We'll definitely delve deeper into Robert Hoffer's work later as we reach the contemporary part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, how art truly comes alive.
Yeah.
As you just heard, that vitality in Hoffer's work, it's deeply rooted in the subjective, in the artist's inner world. And this stands in, well, sharp contrast to art that mainly tries to achieve realistic representation.
Right.
And it's this core dichotomy, this tension between the inner emotional world and the outer observable world that we'll be exploring today.
And it's a dichotomy, a tension that's been present since, well, pretty much the very beginning of visual art. Throughout history, you see art sort of swinging between these two poles. The objective mirror of reality, what we call the mimetic track, and the subjective fire of emotion, the expressive track. And it's that expressive track, really, that infuses paintings and sculptures with this animating power. It breathes a kind of dynamic energy into static forms.
And this isn't just happening in, an artistic bubble. Thinkers like Plato, Descartes, Kant, they've profoundly shaped this interplay over centuries. They challenged artists, asking what kind of truth art should actually convey. Is it outward accuracy or inner feeling?
Good point.
And beyond philosophy, you have these huge cultural shifts, waves of religious fervor, big political upheavals, even technological leaps. They've all, at different times, amplified that expressive instinct strength. Art becomes this powerful mirror to our inner world. Speaking of raw inner feeling, let's journey way back to the very beginnings of Western visual art. Prehistoric art. We're talking, what, 28,000 to 15,000 BCE?
Roughly, yes. An immense span of time.
And when you look at, say, the famous Lascaux caves in France, painted maybe 17,000 to 15,000 BCE, you're not just seeing static pictures of animals, are you?
Not at all. You're witnessing dynamic, almost vibrating depictions. Bison, horses, rendered with these sweeping lines, vibrant ochres. They feel like they're bursting off the cave walls.
Like they're moving.
Absolutely. These aren't just accurate drawings for accuracy's sake. They throb with a ritualistic energy. Scholars think they were likely tied to shamanic visions, perhaps hunting magic. And notice how the artists often depicted animals with multiple legs or overlapping forms. It creates an illusion of movement, almost like an early form of animation.
That's fascinating.
The stylized forms, the bold lines, they clearly prioritize expressing motion, power, spiritual connection over, photographic accuracy. What strikes me is how the recognizable forms, the basic mimesis, are always serving that greater expressive spiritual goal.
And then there's that iconic little figure, the Venus of Willendorf.
Yeah.
That limestone figurine from maybe 28,000 BCE.
Tiny, but powerful.
Her exaggerated fertility features, they aren't about capturing a specific person. It feels like she embodies something much bigger.
Primal generative power. The very essence of life, of creation. It's pure, distilled expression, isn't it? A symbol pulsating with meaning.
And it connects directly to what the philosopher Owen Barfield called original participation.
Original participation.
Yeah, he suggested these early works reflect a time when humans felt, well, fused with the cosmos, not really separating themselves from nature or the spirit world in the way we do now. So art wasn't just a representation. It was a direct, almost unconscious channel for that unified experience, animating it with this unself-conscious vitality.
Wow. Okay. So moving forward quite a bit to classical Greece, around the 5th century BCE, here we see this really fascinating balance developing. Take Polykleidos odoriferus, the spear bearer, right? Around 450, 440 BCE. It shows incredibly precise anatomy, sure, but also that contraposto pose.
That natural stance.
Right, which brought this new sense of lifelike balance to sculpture. But its face, it's serene, it still expresses our, excellence, virtue.
An ideal.
So it's imbuing the statue with this philosophical depth that goes beyond just representation.
It really makes you consider Plato's philosophy, doesn't it? Because while he famously critiqued art mimesis as just a flawed imitation of ideal form.
Right, a copy of a copy.
Exactly. But he also, maybe indirectly, validated expression by demanding that art should reflect higher, deeper truths. The Arte you mentioned in the Doryphorus, that's a perfect example. It's not just a body. It's an ideal made visible, brought to life.
Got it. Okay, then we get into Hellenistic and Roman art. And here, that expressive drama seems to really amplify.
Oh, definitely.
The Laocoon group, from around 250 BCE, it famously just writhes with anguish. Those figures tangled with the serpents, it's not just a picture of suffering. It's visceral. You feel it.
Absolutely. Pure agony in stone.
And even the Nike of Samothrace, Winged Victory, right? Around 190 BCE. With that incredible swirling drapery, it seems to literally soar. It animates the marble with this triumphant energy.
Yeah, movement and power.
And the Romans adapted this too. You see it in the Arapaces, the altar of peace, where the procession of figures expresses this sense of imperial piety, solemnity. And then those Pompeian frescoes, like at the Villa of the Mysteries, pulsing with that Dionysiac, almost ecstatic passion.
A different kind of energy, but it's still intense.
Right. So then, with the rise of Christianity, especially in early Christian and medieval art, we see another huge expressive surge, but this time driven by, spiritual fervor.
A different motivation, yeah.
You look at the catacomb frescoes like the Good Shepherd or those shimmering mosaics in Santa Maria Maggiore. They use stylized figures, gold backgrounds. It's not about realism.
No, it's about conveying divine presence, making you feel something transcendent.
Exactly. Byzantine icons, those Romanesque tympana, the sculptures over church doorways like Vesali's Last Judgment, and then Gothic stained glass like a Chartres.
Breathtaking.
Yeah. They all radiate this intense emotion, whether it's divine awe or spiritual intimacy or even the terror of judgment. Even someone like Giotto with his Lamentation around 1305. He's starting to blend in this nascent realism, but the core is still that profound sorrow. He breathes such powerful human emotion into those frescoes.
And women's contributions here, were they just in convents?
Not exclusively, though convents were centers of learning and artistry. Hildegard of Bingen, 1098 to 1179, is a towering figure, mystic, composer, philosopher, and illustrator. She contributed incredibly expressive, highly symbolic visions to illuminated manuscripts like Civius around 1151, literally animating spiritual revelations with vibrant colors, swirling forms, complex theology.
Bringing visions to life.
Absolutely.
And if we connect this to the broader picture, Augustine's theology was really key here.
How so?
Well, it explicitly validated this expressive focus. It prioritized spiritual resonance over purely mimetic accuracy. For artists back then, the goal was to make the divine felt, deeply felt, rather than just accurately seen.
That makes sense. Okay, so then comes the Renaissance. 14th to 16th centuries, huge mimetic resurgence, right? Humanism, scientific observation, driving this push for realism.
A major shift, yeah.
But interestingly, that expressive track, it didn't disappear. It remained incredibly vibrant. Think of Leonardo's Mona Lisa, painted around 1503, 1506.
Iconic.
Totally. He uses sfumato, that amazing subtle blending to mimic reality, the softness of skin, the atmosphere.
That hazy quality.
But it's her smile, right? That enigmatic smile. That's what expresses this psychological mystery. That's what truly brings the portrait to life. It makes you wonder what she's thinking, why Leonardo chose that expression. Does it hint at that burgeoning Renaissance humanism, that focus on the individual's inner life?
That's a fascinating point. And, it gets even more interesting when you look at someone like Walter Pater.
Oh, yeah.
In his 1873 essay on Michelangelo, Pater actually celebrated Michelangelo's unfinished slaves, those figures struggling out of the marble, from around 1513, 1515. Pater saw that incompleteness as an intentional expressive device. He argued it invites us, the viewers, to imaginatively complete them. The raw, struggling forms radiate this profound sense of inner turmoil, of life emerging.
Wow, I never thought of them that way as intentionally incomplete for expressive effect. That's a brilliant insight. Puts a whole new spin on them.
Right. Pater saw it as this strange beauty, this poetic passion. He was prioritizing the emotional vitality over a perfectly polished, mimetic finish. And this connects beautifully with Owen Barfield's later concept of final participation.
Okay, how does that fit?
Barfield suggested that in later stages of consciousness, viewers need to consciously co-create meaning with the artwork. We bridge the gap between subject and object. So Pater's reading of The Slaves shows how that expressive track infuses art with dynamic, subjective energy, even right in the middle of the Renaissance's big mimetic surge. The viewer isn't just passive, they're actively participating in bringing the art's meaning to life.
That's powerful.
And we absolutely have to mention women artists here, Sofonisba Anguissola.
Yes, an incredible Italian painter, active 1532 to 1625. She brought such emotional depth, psychological insight to her portraits. Her self-portrait at the easel from 1556.
What stands out there?
Her intense, direct gaze, the subtle play of light and shadow, the vibrant colors. It expresses her artistic identity, her intellectual seriousness. It imbues the canvas with this profound personal resonance. Her realistic technique, grounded in mimesis, served this exquisite, expressive intimacy. She wasn't just copying, she was revealing character.
Okay, so moving out of the High Renaissance,
Yeah.
we get Mannerism around 1520 and then the Baroque period. This sounds like another expressive resurgence.
A powerful one, yes. Mannerism, roughly 1520, 1600, it kind of reacted against that high Renaissance harmony, right? It amplified the expressive track with distortion, emotional intensity, like Pontormo's Deposition from around 1528. Those elongated figures, the unsettling colors, it evokes this spiritual yearning, infuses the whole scene with a sense of unease.
A deliberate move away
Yeah.
from balance, yeah. Very emotional. You see it too in El Greco's Burial of the Count of Orgaz from the 1580s.
Oh, absolutely. That painting just pulsates with mystical ecstasy. It's swirling, elongated figures are alive with spiritual energy, contrasting the earthly solemnity below with this heavenly ascent that feels profoundly emotional, immediate. And then the Baroque period, roughly 1600, 1700, just fully embraced theatricality. Caravaggio's The Calling of St. Matthew, around 1599, 1600, that dramatic light, the chiaroscuro, showing this visceral, immediate emotion.
Yeah, like a spotlight hitting the soul.
Or Bernini's Ecstasy of St. Teresa, around 1647, 1652, capturing divine passion in swooning marble. It makes viewers almost feel the angel's arrow, that intense spiritual moment.
It makes you wonder how much intense religious feeling at the time influenced this, right? You had figures like Ignatius of Loyola, whose spiritual exercises actually encouraged vivid visualization as a path to God.
Ah, interesting connection.
And Teresa of Avila, whose writings about her mystical experiences, her interior castle, kind of shaped these visionary distortions in art. They fuel this expressive surge, pushing artists not just to illustrate stories, but to make inner ecstatic states feel tangible, real.
Got it. Okay, so after Baroque, we get Rococo, around 1715, 1770. A shift again, right? More towards playful expressiveness, focusing on pleasure, fantasy, lightness.
More intimate, decorative.
Think of Watteau's The Embarkation for Cythera, or Boucher's The Toilet of Venus, sparkling with this sensual charm, almost frivolous sometimes.
A different kind of feeling, less intense maybe, but still expressive of a certain lifestyle, certain desires.
And then neoclassicism reacts against that, from around 1760, 1800. A strong return to mimetic clarity, order, reason, inspired by Greece and Rome again. Like David's Oath of the Herati, very clear, precise anatomy, balanced composition, but still expressing powerful patriotic fervor.
Right, the emotion is channeled into civic virtue duty.
So even in its clarity, there's an expressive goal.
And, you could argue Descartes' philosophy, his mind-body dualism, kind of played a role here too, indirectly.
How so with Rococo and neoclassicism?
Well, by separating mind and body, you could say it sort of validated Rococo's focus on subjective fantasies and inner feelings, giving artists permission to explore personal dreams, not just external reality. That fueled Rococo's intimacy.
Okay.
Neoclassicism, on the other hand, maybe sought Descartes' call for clear, distinct ideas in its structure and themes, even while still imbuing its art with those noble, controlled emotions you mentioned.
Interesting philosophical undercurrents. Okay, this leads us right into Romanticism, roughly 1780, 1850. And this is a huge expressive surge, right? Actively rejecting Enlightenment rationalism for subjective passion, emotion, and the sublime.
Absolutely. Emotion takes center stage.
You think of Goya's Saturn devouring his sun from his black paintings around 1819, 1823. I mean, it depicts this frenzied titan with distorted forms. It just breathes raw, primal horror right onto the canvas. It's terrifying.
Unforgettable image. Pure nightmare fuel.
Or consider Caspar David Friedrich's Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog around 1818.
Yeah.
It evokes this deep introspective awe. That misty landscape isn't just background scenery, it feels like an active force, animating the figure's solitude, making us feel that vastness, that smallness in the face of nature.
And Turner's The Slave Ship, 1840.
Just swirls with moral outrage, bringing the seascape to life with fiery, turbulent colors, raw, almost violent energy, making you feel the horror of the scene.
In Kant's philosophy, his critique of judgment from 1790 was really key here.
Incredibly significant. It profoundly shaped romantic art by emphasizing the sublime's animating power, that blend of pleasure with fear or awe.
Engaging the imagination beyond just the senses.
Pushing it to transcend sensory limits, grasp something beyond mere understanding. Friedrich's Wanderer embodies that awe, that spiritual yearning. Goya's Saturn evokes that sublime terror, and Kant's aesthetic judgment, valuing art for disinterested pleasure, validated subjective experience as a path to universal yet deeply personal resonance.
Giving artists philosophical permission to prioritize feeling.
Empowering them to infuse art with immense emotional, imaginative vitality, ensuring the expressive track's dominance. And women artists were crucial here too, like Marie-Guillemine Benoist.
Her Portrait of Madeline from 1800.
A striking portrait of a black woman. It uses realistic detail to capture her likeness, yes, but the direct gaze, the dignified pose, it radiates empowerment, humanity. It imbues the canvas with powerful social commentary, an undeniable individual presence amid Romanticism's emotional wave.
So Kant's whole idea of aesthetic judgment, valuing art for this disinterested pleasure, pleasure not tied to practical use or even just prettiness, it profoundly validated subjective experience. It empowered artists to infuse their work with this emotional and imaginative vitality that resonates far beyond just depiction. It's about the feeling it sparks in you.
Makes perfect sense for Romanticism. Okay, so moving into the mid-19th century, we get realism, around 1840, 1870. This prioritized the mimetic track again, focusing on everyday life, often the unvarnished truth.
Reaction against romantic idealism.
Like Courbet's The Stonebreakers from 1849. It depicts gritty reality, hard labor, but it still expresses social critique, right? It infuses the canvas with empathy for the working class, making a statement.
Absolutely. The realism serves an expressive, critical purpose there.
And then Impressionism follows, roughly 1870, 1890. Instead of capturing static reality, they aim to capture fleeting perceptions, the raw data of light, color, as seen by the eye in a moment.
Monet's Impression, Sunrise, 1872. The painting that gave the movement its name.
Perfect example. Uses loose, visible brushwork to express the hazy, shimmering quality of a sunrise over a harbor, infusing the scene with vibrant sensory energy. And Rodin's sculpture, The Thinker, 1880s.
Feels both real and not quite.
It's rooted in classical anatomy, yes, but he imbues the bronze with intense introspective energy, blending realist accuracy with an impressionist's textured, almost atmospheric surface. You feel the thought process.
And Mary Cassatt, American Impressionist.
Pivotal, active 1844 to 1926. She infused her work with incredible emotional warmth, intimate observation, her Panic the Child's Bath, 1893.
So Ted.
With its soft colors, gentle brushwork, tender gestures, it exquisitely expresses maternal intimacy. Imbues the scene with a quiet, profound life. Her grounding in realistic anatomy allowed her to beautifully blend mimesis with subjective perception, elevating women's domestic experiences, bringing this vibrant, deeply felt life to Impressionism's expressive track. Then post-Impressionism, say 1880, 1905, this really feels like a bridge to modern art, amplifying that expressive track even further.
Definitely laying the groundwork.
I mean, think of Van Gogh's The Starry Night, 1889. Swirling with vibrant blues and yellows, it animates the entire sky with this emotional turmoil that feels so deeply personal, so intense.
You feel his inner state projected onto the landscape.
Or Gauguin's Where Do We Come From, 1897. Using those symbolic figures, those bold colors, to explore huge existential questions about life, death, meaning.
Very philosophical, very expressive.
And Cezanne, too, with his Mont Sainte-Victoire paintings, animating the structure of the landscape itself with his subjective perception, breaking it down.
Building blocks of modernism right there.
Yeah.
And we must mention Paula Modersohn-Becker again here, 1876, 1907.
Yeah.
a German pioneer.
Absolutely crucial. She profoundly anticipated Expressionism. Her self-portrait with Amber Necklace from 1906 uses bold, non-naturalistic colors, simplified, almost crude forms.
Very direct.
To express raw individuality and unflinching self-awareness, she literally imbues her canvases with this intense introspective life, making her a key figure, highlighting the powerful role women played in this foundational expressive surge, leading directly into German Expressionism. Around 1905-1914, this feels like the expressive track reaching a kind of peak intensity.
Or a real explosion of feeling, yeah.
Kirchner Street, Berlin, 1913. Those jagged lines, clashing colors, depicting urban alienation, making the city itself pulse with this anxious, nervous energy.
Captures that modern city vibe perfectly.
Or Nold's The Last Supper, 1909, with its raw spiritual fervor, and Kandinsky pushing towards abstraction with works like Composition 7th in 1913, making forms and colors radiate with almost musical rhythms, spiritual energy.
Pure expression, moving beyond representation altogether.
And Katie Kollwitz, Her Mother with Dead Child from 1903, just wrenching grief.
So powerful. And, thinkers like Nietzsche, with his call for embracing raw passion, the Dionysian spirit, and Freud, with his developing insights into the subconscious, they really fueled this intensity. They built on Kant's sublime, but drove artists even deeper into subjective truth, revealing inner turmoil, spiritual longing, sometimes primal urges.
And, something really chilling, but also incredibly illuminating, happened right after this period reached its height.
Ah, you're talking about the Nazi reaction.
Exactly. In 1937, the Nazi regime put on that infamous degenerate art exhibition in Munich. They actively vilified Expressionism. Works by Kirchner, Nolde, Kandinsky, Kollwitz. They were publicly mocked, confiscated, deemed un-German.
A horrifying chapter.
Yeah. The Nazis favored this completely different aesthetic, static, cold, neoclassical-inspired stuff, like Arno Brinker's sculptures, The Party, or Adolf Ziegler's sterile, idealized nudes. They felt utterly lifeless, devoid of emotion compared to the raw, subjective pulse of Expressionism.
And that historical moment, as awful as it was, really underscores the power of the expressive track, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
The Nazis' violent rejection starkly highlights how this kind of art focused on inner feeling, subjectivity breathes vital life onto a canvas or into sculpture. It defies authoritarian rigidity with its dynamic, unpredictable subjectivity. They feared its emotional pulse, its freedom. It showed them something they couldn't control.
That's a really profound point.
So the clash wasn't just aesthetic, it was ideological. Life versus rigidity.
Absolutely. This profound clash between a living art and a dead ideology underscores Expressionism's incredible power to breathe life into art, directly defying authoritarian rigidity with its dynamic subjectivity, a powerful legacy carried forward by women like Kollwitz into subsequent modern movements, resonating powerfully in modern art's freedom, its refusal to be silenced.
Wow. Okay, so after that intensity, the 20th century continues to evolve. Cubism arrives, maybe 1907 into the 20s. How does that fit?
Cubism actively fragments reality, blending both tracks in revolutionary ways. Picasso's groundbreaking La Demoiselle d'Avignon, 1907, uses angular forms, multiple viewpoints to evoke primal energy, psychological intensity.
It's jarring, confrontational.
Exactly. Imbuing the figures with this confrontational life, Georges Braque's Violin and Candlestick, 1910, expresses perceptual flux, the multifaceted nature of reality. Its fragmented planes seem to pulsate with subjective perception, seeing all sides at once.
And Sonia Delaunay, a key figure here too.
Absolutely. A brilliant Ukrainian-French artist, 1885-1979. A key figure in Orphism, developing alongside Cubism. Her Prismas, Electric, 1914, uses vibrant, concentric, abstract forms to express rhythmic energy, the sensation of light. Imbuing Cubism with the emotional pulse of pure color.
And abstract expressionism, 1940s, 50s, expression taken to its limit.
Pushed to its absolute limit, yes. Actively divorcing itself from mimetic representation in pursuit of pure emotional, psychological release. The act of painting becomes the subject.
Jackson Pollock. Number 1A, 1948, pure energy.
Just drips, splatters with spontaneous, chaotic energy, a direct physical engagement with the canvas, imprinting it with raw, unfiltered emotion, action painting.
Or Mark Roscoe, those color fields.
Vast color fields that seem to expand, recede, imbuing the canvas with profound spiritual depth, a quiet, contemplative resonance, pure mood.
Even sculpture, give its Miss Cuby series.
Monumental works like Cubi 9X, 1964, taking industrial steel, imbuing it with dynamic geometry, a sense of precarious balance, reflecting the restless energy of the modern world.
And Lee Krasner, a powerful abstract expressionist.
formidable presence in the New York School, 1908-1984. She infused works like The Seasons, 1957, with dynamic, swirling forms, bold gestures, directly expressing emotional vitality, raw psychological states.
Her contributions were sometimes overshadowed.
Unfortunately, yes, often by her husband, Pollock. But her powerful contributions reinforced the vital role of women in this expressive peak, demonstrating that art could embody pure subjective life, freed from mimetic constraints, bringing existential themes to vivid, powerful resonance.
Which brings us all the way to now, 2025. Is this expressive mimetic dichotomy still relevant? Is it still happening?
Oh, absolutely. It thrives in incredibly diverse, often surprising forms, constantly reflecting our rapid technological advancements, our complex cultural shifts.
Like pop art. Warhol's Campbell Soup Cans, 1962. Seems purely mimetic.
On the surface, yes. Mimics consumer goods with almost bland precision. Yet it expresses this profound, ironic detachment cultural critique, imbuing the canvas with a cool, detached commentary on consumerism. The expression is in the choice of subject, the repetition.
And photorealism. Chuck Close's huge self-portraits.
Big self-portrait, 1967-68. Uses hyperrealism, captures every pore, every hair, but the sheer scale, the meticulous detail, it imbues the portraits with profound psychological depth and almost confrontational presence. You can't look away. Then Neo-Expressionism in the 80s, Basquiat's Untitled, Skull, pulsing with this raw urban angst, clearly echoing the vitality of earlier Expressionism.
Yeah, that energy came roaring back.
Street art, too. Banksy's Balloon Girl, expressing political hope and loss in such a simple, powerful image. And you see recent 2025 murals tackling things like climate change with that same expressive urgency.
Art in the public sphere, making you feel, making you think.
Even digital and NFT art. People's everyday's collage, blending surreal, often disturbing imagery. And now we're seeing AI-generated art in 2025 exhibitions, exploring new ways to convey feeling or critique technology itself.
New tools, same fundamental drive to express.
And contemporary realism is still strong. Kehinde Wiley's portrait of Barack Obama realistic likeness, but animated with those symbolic floral backgrounds, expressing cultural identity and power in a really vibrant way.
Using realism expressively, yeah.
Or even interactive art, like Anish Kapoor's Cloudgate in Chicago, the bean animating reflective steel through our interaction with it, creating this sense of collective awe and play.
The viewer participation becomes part of the expression. So the expressive instinct, far from being a relic, it's as vital as ever, imbuing art with new forms of life and meaning right now in 2025.
Which brings us directly and perfectly back to our contemporary highlight, New Expressions paintings by Robert Hoffer at True Grit Art Gallery.
Yes, this upcoming exhibition, it really embodies the enduring power of that expressive track, showing how it shines, how it thrives today.
It really does.
So just to remind everyone, the exhibition runs from July 12th through August 9th, 2025. It's at True Grit Art Gallery, 38 Center Street, Middleborough, Massachusetts. And the artist, Robert Hoffer.
He's Marshfield-based, holds a BFA from Cooper Union in New York City, a really prestigious fine arts program.
And his approach seems incredibly relevant to our whole conversation today.
Absolutely. He directly engages with this expressive track. He takes seemingly everyday subjects, landscapes, still lifes, people, and rather than just replicating them, he transforms them into compelling visuals using a profoundly expressionist approach.
He actually said something about this, didn't he?
Yes, as Hoffer himself states, and I'm quoting here, Expressionism as a discipline subverts the subject matter to the inner responses and emotions of the artist, which results in works that are really about the act of painting, rather than representing any literal form of reality.
That just perfectly encapsulates everything we've been exploring, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Subverting the subject to inner responses. It's about the act of painting.
Precisely. And his stated goal is to create unique images that do not give up their secrets all at once, but invite further inspection and contemplation.
He's literally imbuing his canvases with emotional depth, dynamic vitality, inviting you, the viewer, to engage in that final participation we talked about with Michelangelo, to actively co-create meaning.
Exactly. It underscores how the expressive track continues to breathe profound life into art.
Engaging viewers in that living dialogue right here in 2025. Proving its timeless relevance.
It's a perfect contemporary example.
So if you want to experience this animating power firsthand, please don't miss the opening reception for Robert Hoffer's New Expressions. It's on Saturday, July 12th from 6 to 8 p.m.
A fantastic chance to see this vibrant, living force of art in action.
And feel that unique resonance for yourself. So we try to wrap this up, connect it back to the big picture. From those bison in Lascaux, pulsing with ritual energy, right up to Banksy's poignant murals on city walls today.
Right.
That expressive track has consistently infused Western visual art with this undeniable animating power.
Yeah.
It's emotional, it's subjective, it's about dynamic vitality. It's truly what breathes life into static forms, makes them resonate with us across centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about those philosophers, Plato, Kant, and those key moments, we talked about Pater seeing life in unfinished stone, Kant defining the sublime's power over the romantics, even the Nazis' fear of expressionism's pulse. They all just powerfully underscore this profound living force in art.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Well, maybe next time you encounter a piece of art, could be a painting in a gallery, could be a sculpture, could be a mural on a city street. Just take a second and consider. Is it primarily trying to mirror reality, to show you exactly what something looks like? Or is it inviting you into the artist's inner world? Is it trying to make you feel something profound, anger, joy, awe, unease? How does it make you feel? How does it animate you personally?
Yeah.
Because that expressive instinct, it's clearly alive and well. It continues to make art this vibrant, essential reflection of the human spirit. So the question maybe is, what new emotional landscape, what part of yourself will you discover through what you see next?